So today we are going to be talking with Sally, how Sally got a job at Ogilvy and now at VML. And a little bit of rundown. I'll do a quick intro of Sally first, but Sally, I'll let you do your own proper intro in a minute. So Sally has a Bachelor of Graphic Design from RMIT in Australia and is also an ABI alumna. So did a graphic design internship at an agency called Reflex Group in New York. Previously was an art director at Ogilvy, working across Melbourne and London with clients like Target, Cadbury, and Dove, a few small brands you may have heard of. And currently an art director at VML, so one of the world's largest creative agencies. So really excited to chat with you, Sally. Quick background
Great.
of who I am. So I'm the COO of ArtBound Initiative. We're an internship program for aspiring designers, producers, artists, content creators, and we've helped over 1,000 participants who've gone through our program to get internships and get their career started within the creative industry. Um, and just a quick brief on the topics. So we'll go through a little bit of Sally's career journey and talking about how she landed to where she is now. I'm sure all of you are aspiring to have a career that it's even partly as great as hers. Outbound Initiative, who we are, we're going to go through that and then just open Q&A. So plenty of time to go through questions. I love any questions that you have for Sally or have for me about career, about art direction, about working in agencies, about getting started, about, job market, anything. Love chatting about all that. So please load up your questions as we go through the chat today. Be happy to go through that as much as possible. Cool. So I'm going to stop sharing screen here, and maybe Sally, you can start off. Just give everybody an introduction about who you are.
Yeah, sounds good. So nice to meet everyone. Thanks so much for taking the time out, especially if you are joining at 5 a.m. That is very impressive. Yeah, as Ben mentioned, I'm Sally. I'm an art director. I've been sort of doing creative jobs for the last sort of 8 years since uni, but gone in a weird roundabout way. So definitely excited to chat to you all about how you can have quite a non-traditional journey in the creative world. And yeah, I'm currently living in London, but I am kind of Melbourne based. So, seen a bit of Australia and the UK's kind of creative industry, which are similar and different. So, excited to chat to you all about that today.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for the intro. Let's start off talking about your current role, and then we're gonna go into like backtracking of how you actually got there. So let's kind of orient everybody a bit with what's the agency that you're working at now,
Yeah.
what's the group that they're a part of, and what's the role that you have actually. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm currently at VML in the London office. VML is a creative agency that's under this big WPP banner that Ogilvy is also in. I'm currently working mostly on Volkswagen in their account, but I do kind of touch all different sort of, they've got heaps of clients. They're the biggest agency I've worked at in terms of office size. So they've got heaps of clients, and it's one of the first times I've kind of been specifically on one client, but touch all different things. So it's been a lot of fun. I've been there for 4 months, so I'm still a little bit new. Um, but yeah, it's going really well so far, and the team are great. So yeah,
Cool.
any other questions about that, let me know.
Yeah, and tell us, so you're an art director, right, for
Yeah.
VML. So tell us a little bit, we have at least one person starting studying art direction here. But for
Yeah.
those who are on the call who didn't study it or who aren't necessarily perfectly clear, tell us a bit
Yeah.
about your role and what it actually entails.
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like it's one of those job titles that I was absolutely not clear on and understood exist until I got into it. So basically, an art director is kind of in charge of the visuals of making an ad. So I work with a creative partner who is in charge of the words. She's a copywriter, and we basically come together to come up with ideas for advertisements. It can be TV ads, it can be a little bit smaller, like social media ads, but basically, our job is to kind of come up with the concept of what the ad's going to be about, sort of solve the brand problem. And then we work with a much larger team, like a production team that helps sort of bring the ad to life. So we're kind of doing the first part of what will the ad look like? What will it say? What will it, what's the concept of it? And then we work with a bigger team to bring it to life.
Cool. And what are the inputs that you get? Like, when does it trigger your job, and what type of thing are you getting? Are you getting a brief? And what are the outputs that you end up giving out to the next team?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we will normally get a brief, and that will sort of look like, hey, this brand's got a problem that they want to solve by, educating the public on what, on like through an ad. So basically, for example, say it's Cadbury and they're launching a new chocolate bar. Their sort of problem in a brief would be, hey, we've got this chocolate bar, nobody knows what it is. How would you guys launch it as a product? And then it's our job to take that kind of brief, which will normally be a written brief. And we'll take that and come up with ideas and bring them back to the team. That's sort of the input. The first step of that is that there's a lot of people in a strategy team that do work to kind of put that brief together. So if we're lucky and the team have done a good job, which they normally do, we'll get quite a long brief of like, this is what people feel about the chocolate bar. This is what it is. It's dark chocolate or whatever it is. We'll get quite a lot of context, and then that will make it a lot easier for us to come up with ideas that align with that. And in terms of outputs, it can be a whole number of things. The biggest and most exciting brief that everybody wants is a TV ad. But,
Mhm.
you can also, I love posters and out of home, like billboards. That's sort of the big, most exciting ones. And then you can also get briefs that can be a lot of fun for like something smaller, like a social paid ad, a display banner, an email. It can really vary. Sometimes a campaign's got all of those things, and sometimes it's a lot smaller. Like I've had briefs before that's like, we just want to send out one email so that everyone understands what this product is. So it can be a whole number of things.
Cool. And when the client is coming in the very beginning stages, are they usually coming saying, hey, we're launching, let's use the chocolate bar as an example. We're
Mm.
launching a new chocolate bar. This is our budget. And this is the reach that we're trying to get. Now you decide the media strategy, or is the media strategy and the outlets already decided by the client? And then your team is coming in and saying, okay, we know that we need a 30-second TVC. We know that we need a socials. We know we need an email campaign. Now we're just designing those specific things.
It's a really good question, and it does change from time to time. A lot of the times, we don't specifically do the media. We get, it's going to be a 30-second ad to your point, and then we work backwards. But there's other times if you come in really early in the process, for example, if it's kind of a new client relationship or a really big deal, we can sort of suggest, hey, we really think this would work super well as a social campaign, and then we'll brief a media team. But I would say the majority of the time, the media is kind of penciled in and you can work around that a little bit. So that sort of helps create some guardrails a lot of the time, as opposed to just coming up with, I think one of the biggest sort of tropes is you get a brief and you're like, okay, this could be amazing. It's a $1 million kind of activation. The client like, oh no, it's a banner. So I do think
Yeah.
a lot of the time in the brief you get a little bit of a steer of that, which is really helpful.
Okay, cool. And at what points in your process is a client
Mm.
involved?
Good
Versus
question.
just,
Yeah.
because you mentioned going back to the team with ideas. I assume
Mhm.
that that's your creative director or somebody more
Yeah.
executive within the agency who's helping to steer and guideline before they present to the client, right? At what points is client involved in your process?
Yeah. So basically, we would come up with some concepts to your point, and then we would show our creative director. And we basically would have a creative internal review first. That's the first process that it stays in creative. And once he or she's kind of on board, then we will then take it to the broader team. And that means like the account directors that are in charge of chatting to the client to make sure that they think it's going to please the client. That can also be like the project managers to make sure that what you've put forward is doable. So that'll be your sort of internal team review of maybe an extra sort of 5 people to make sure that everyone at VML or Ogilvy or wherever you are sort of on board with this idea and can back it to the client. And
Mhm.
then it will go to the client after that. So there's sort of 3 stages: creative review, wider team review, client review.
Got it. And then sometimes I'm sure that has to go back to the start if the client is like, this is not
Yes, that'll repeat.
until they're happy. Yeah,
Yes.
cool. Okay, so then it's out of your hands after that, or are you involved in the process all the way until that commercial is finished, for example?
We're involved in the process. So basically, the once the client have sort of signed off, we like your idea, we want to make it. It will then be briefed to the production team, and that will be people that are looking like, okay, we need to find a location for this, we need to find a cast for this, but you'll still be very much involved. We'll be, if it is something bigger like TV, the production team will be putting forward locations to us, and we'll still be making sure that it kind of lines up with our original idea. So, sort of ticking and crossing everything off. They'll just be more in charge of like the logistics of things. But you do most of the time get to see it through the journey, which is really good.
Cool. And on the one more question about this. So if you're producing a
Mm-hmm.
TV commercial, for example, um, within your team, you mentioned that there's a copywriter, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if it's something that's recorded, or if it's something that's written, are you deciding all the like what's the output that you are giving to the next team? Is it a concept and brief with a script? Is it actually including visuals? Is it a mood board? Is it like what are you handing off to the next team?
Yeah, so I work with a copywriter directly. She's basically like my other half, and we're like a duo. And so she'll be sort of writing the script while I'll be coming up with like a mood board. And by the time we've sort of gotten to a point where the client are buying an idea, which is sort of what we call it when they approve it, we'll
Yeah,
have quite a solid, okay, here's a script, here's roughly where we'd like it to take place, here's roughly what we're thinking for like styling, but you can kind of continue to develop with that with the production team, if that makes sense. So they'll sort of start to input, but we don't pass it off to them per se. It's more just like they come on to the
got it.
process, and then it's
Yeah.
the bigger
They kind of
team
merge
working
into
on
the process with you
it.
and you start
Exactly.
involving other teams,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And whose responsibility is it to ensure that that gets seen all the way to the end? Is that the creative director or the account manager? Like,
Yeah, definitely both. I think the creative director is such an important person. They're always sort of there, watching over it. They're kind of like the guardian of it, especially if they're really proud of it, which is, most of the time you want to make something really, really good. They've got, eyes on it. So they're super important and they never really drop off. They're always kind of almost like your manager, your guardian in this situation. And
cool.
then the accounts team, their job is to make sure the client's happy. So we can't go rogue and make whatever they like. We like the account manager's always there to just be like, okay, are you guys on track? Are we meeting what they want? Are they happy? That's sort of their job. So we're all kind of one little family, making sure that everyone's happy.
Cool. Yeah. And where do you get some of your inspiration from? Like, how do you actually come up with some of these ideas? A lot of your job is so really creative driven, right? I mean, you are inside and out a creative in your job most of the day, I imagine, which is something I think a lot of people aspire to do at a larger scale. Um, how do you actually come up with some of your ideas once you have that brief?
Yeah, that it's a good question. It can be really hard, but I think everyone sort of develops their own way of doing it. For me, I start with basically no idea is a bad idea. I just write every single thing down. It can be insanely stupid, it can be out of budget, it can be maybe not right for the brand, but I just write literally every kind of brainwave that pops into my head. So I basically end up having like a list of like 1,000 things, most of which are bad ideas. But then with a little bit of time, you go back and you sort of think about the ones that are sticking and being like, okay, that could maybe work. I also personally am so partial to a really big walk. I don't think that creatives need to be sitting at their desk, like researching and hoping for something to come to them. I feel like, step away from it, go for a big walk. An idea can come to you in the shower, it can come to you when you're cooking. I think it's a lot of the time having the brief in your head and then also just creating like a little bit of distance from it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of
Mm.
I'm sure I haven't read it, but I'm sure there's a lot of research around, how hard your subconscious is working on something when you're not paying attention to it, which is actually what you need, right? You need kind of your brain to like work in the background and without the like logical filters that your conscious brain has, because your conscious brain is
Exactly.
super logical, right? And it's like filtering like, no, that wouldn't work, no, that's out of budget, no, that doesn't make sense. But your
Exactly.
like subconscious is like, oh, all these random things, I'm going to start putting them together, and it starts to get super creative. um
Exactly.
cool. And what are some of the brands or some of the campaigns that you've worked on that really stick out to you, or that you just absolutely loved some of the exciting things that you did. Like, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one that sort of stands out is working on Target in Australia. That was a really tricky one because it was the first time I had done fashion, which is like a completely different ball game to a lot of other brands because, it's all about making things like feel beautiful and the fabrics feel really important. And the whole idea was to sort of create a bit of like a platform so that Australians could really kind of buy into Target and understand that the brand was all about quality. So the language and the campaign had to be a lot more like refined and classy than some of the big silly ideas it's really fun to come up with. So that took a really long time to kind of go back and forth and like get all the silly stuff out and end up landing on something a little bit safer and not boring in any way, but in terms of what I'm kind of used to doing, almost taking a more refined approach and being like, okay, we're just trying to make things look nice, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's such a big brand as well. It's must have been exciting to start
Yeah.
working on working with major brands like that. Do
Yeah.
you feel like you are where you expected your career to be or wanted your career to be? Are you still feeling like you're chasing something? Or was there like a moment where you're like, oh man, like cool. Like I'm where I had like I made it in some way. Like I'm good, like I've hit a checkpoint, in my career and in my life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I think in some ways I do feel really proud of myself when I look at sort of like the client list and the things I get to work on day to day. I definitely take seats back and go, okay, I'm super happy that I get to do this. But I do always feel like I'm kind of chasing the next thing. Like in my head, there's people that have had, massive awards for big campaigns that have gone viral and all this stuff. And in my head, I'm like, I want that, I want that. But I think you always feel like there's sort of the next kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think I'm very happy with where I'm at currently. But yeah, I think as people and creatives, we're always feeling like we want the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
feel imposter syndrome or did you feel imposter syndrome at any point?
I absolutely felt imposter syndrome really, really badly when I sort of first made the shift from graphic design to art direction, which are in the same sort of wheelhouse, but just slightly different in terms of art direction being a little bit more like presenting and thinking. And I think I sort of struggled with, in my head, I've always thought of myself as a creative person, but advertising, they just all felt like they knew exactly how it worked. And I'd come from a creative background, but didn't quite understand how to write a script or present to a client and all these things that felt like second nature to a lot of my colleagues. And it's all something that you can easily learn if you're just around people and putting your hand up and being in the right environment. But for me, it was a massive shock of like, okay, I can't believe I thought I could be here. Like just because I'm a creative person, why do I think that I can actually come up with ideas? So that was really tricky for the first couple of years. But I think it was just honestly just asking questions and being like, oh, I don't quite know how this works, and not thinking that everyone's in like a secret club that you don't know about. Like people are
Yeah.
happy to share their advice. I think that was the main
Yeah.
hurdle to get past that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Interesting. And do you still feel that feeling now, or do you feel like pretty comfortable and confident?
I do sometimes get imposter syndrome. I think when you're in a room with all these amazing creatives and people are just sort of spitballing and coming up with things in ways that seem effortless, I definitely go, oh my God, how did they get there? But I think it's all just kind of practice, I think
Right.
I definitely don't feel it as much when I first started because I think I can sort of hold my own in the environment a little bit more. But from time to time, I absolutely still get it. I look around, I'm like, especially when I can't come up with something, which does happen, and it happens quite regularly. And you're just sitting there being like, oh my God. And then somebody else cracks it. That can be quite tricky. But I think, you can't nail every brief, I think is sort of something I've realized.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm,
No, I think a lot of people feel that, and
mm,
oftentimes, which I tell a lot of participants as well, is like
mm.
having imposter syndrome is actually a good thing. It means you're stretching yourself a little bit beyond what you're comfortable in, and if you're not having that feeling, it probably means you need to push yourself a little harder into something that's a little bit outside your comfort zone,
True.
right?
Yeah.
So those are good feelings to have and not negative feelings to have. Um,
Yeah.
you've had a really successful career, and just reading from your LinkedIn really quick. You went to RMIT and graduated in sorry, when did you graduate? 2018, 2019?
Oh, I think in 2018. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you did some freelance design work for them and for another company. And then you did the internship with Reflex Group through
Yeah.
us. And then you're a graphic designer for Conversion Digital, and then for Marilyn and Sons, doing campaigns for like the Body Shop, and then for Dentsu, which is a huge brand,
Yeah.
as an art director, and an art director for Ogilvy, and now art director for VML. Like that's a very successful linear career. You said it bounced around a lot, but it's quite linear, right? In terms of how some careers can go. Like you've stayed in a creative lane, you've been
Yeah.
able to work into bigger and bigger agencies and roles. What do you think are some of the maybe hard skill sets and also soft skill sets that allowed you to actually grow your career successfully like that?
Yeah, I think just to like touch on the linear point, I think I agree with you. It's definitely really linear in terms of being creative the whole time, but I think for me it felt like a massive shift to go from graphic design to art director, which you know what, it's not really, but I think because a lot of people came from like an advertising background, that was one of those things where I was like, "Oh, like what am I kind of doing here?" But
Yeah.
yeah, agree. Otherwise, I've never steered from being creative and I hope that I don't have to. TBC. Um, and in terms of skills, I think it was really great to do graphic design at uni first. I think that hard skill of actually knowing how to mock up something and make things look good and tidy it has been invaluable for me because I think a lot of the time you have something in your head and it's like, in your head, a bit of a creative vision, but you do need to be able to sort of execute that. And you don't need to be able to mock it up perfectly, but you do need to be able to sort of get in a room and make sure that people understand what you mean. So,
Mm.
in that way, that hard skill is very important. And then, in the same point, I think the soft skill of being able to sell your work is so important. You can be like the best creative in the world and have these amazing ideas, but if you can't get in a room and talk to why they're good and sort of back yourself, I think that's when you'll really, really struggle. Like you need to be able to tell people this is a great idea and it's going to work because of here and why, and this is how we're going to sort of get there. Like that is kind of probably the most important thing because you can have a great idea and it could go nowhere because everyone's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. So being able to sell your and defend your ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. And what do you think made you stand out during those jobs that you got throughout? Were those through connections, or were those through cold applications? Like what was most of the way that you got from one position to the next?
Always applications. I think uni, when I was studying graphic design, I think RMIT were a really great uni, and I'm sure there's heaps of other good ones too, that they would sort of send out, hey, you guys are studying graphic design, here's some really good opportunities. Or you could go down to the career center that most unis have and be like, I'm studying graphic design, I'd really like to do some graphic design. So through uni, I started sort of either volunteering or doing not well paid graphic design kind of jobs here and there. And I think that really helped set me up for then applying to jobs in the future because while my experience was just little kind of things at university, I think companies really valued that I had at least tried sort of working in the real world. So I
Yeah.
definitely recommend putting your hand up and doing odd jobs here and there for whatever you can while you're at uni.
Yeah.
Any sort of graphic design or creative work is valued, whether it's a small, tiny company or a big one.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think in the early stages of your career,
Mhm.
especially after you finish 4 years of school, 3 or 4 years of school,
Mhm.
it can feel like you want to just get started and you want a stable job and you want the income. So you're looking for that as opposed to looking of how to build the bridge gap of where
Yeah,
your profile is compared to what you're competing against. Um, it don't feel it beneath you to be doing work
exactly.
for free or to be, volunteering for people or to be doing things to build out your portfolio because it stands out, and I think that
Yeah.
employers, recruitment is a process of elimination. So, the first thing they're going to look at is like, does this person have a decent resume and portfolio? If not, out. Okay, now that they have a decent portfolio, does it match our style? If not, out, right? Like, now I'm going to
Mhm.
look at the past work that they did. Now we're going to interview and see if they fit our culture, if not, out, et cetera, until you're the last person in that process of elimination. So if you don't have a few experiences on your resume, or you don't have enough stuff in your portfolio, um, you'll just be cut out of the process for somebody else
Yeah.
that does. So build up your, profile and portfolio as much as you can, to compete well. Tell
And the
me,
first
yeah,
steps are always kind of the hardest as well. Like I think
yeah,
getting your first job is really, really tricky. So if you have to do things that are not perfect or not paid or whatever, that like building block, it gets much easier, I feel. I think it's just
yeah,
really hard to get your foot in the door.
yeah. It's really hard to get the gears turning, and
Exactly.
in the beginning stages of your career, like you may know that your style is different, or you may believe in your own work ethic or abilities, but for a recruiter, like, sorry to say, but your profile looks just the same as a bunch of other people's, and it's really hard for them to discern amongst 100 people that are applying, like, okay, so who actually has the drive and motivation here? How do they tell
Yeah.
that? Oh, this person went and did a bunch of projects in their own time, when they weren't asked to. Well, this person has
Yeah.
some drive in this industry that this person may not have, right? So that's the only signs that they have, right? Like, there's nothing else to go off of. But then once you have relationships and you've built career and whatnot, it's really easy then to be like leaning into those connections or leaning into your experience to be able to get work much easier. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, cool. I'm gonna just take a quick pause and talk about ABI really quick, Sally, so you can take a little
Yeah.
water break or something.
Sounds good.
And for everybody that's on the call, I would love for you to start popping your questions in the chat. I will go in chronological order, and um, you know, any questions are on the table here, in terms of Sally's experience, working within an agency, how to get an internship, like, early career stuff, like, this is what this session is all about. So please, for those of you that are here in the call, you came to the call and not watch the recording for a reason. It's to interact with us, right? So please just take advantage of this opportunity to get as much information that you can from Sally as possible and from myself. But let me just take a brief kind of 5-minute segue here to talk about ArtBound Initiative. So a quick introduction, we're a global internship program for creatives. You can think of us like an extra course that you take outside of your university. We're like that bridge between your university and your career, and we help students and recent grads get their career started by placing into an internship, but also focusing around career readiness and network building. And we're a small program. So we have about 250 participants come through a year, meaning that we give really hands-on dedicated support to all the participants that are coming through. Internship destinations that you can go to through our program. Lots in the US, New York, Chicago, LA, Miami, and Austin. London and Berlin in Europe, Melbourne and Sydney in Australia. And then we have a virtual program if you're not in these destinations and traveling is out of your budget. There's plenty of virtual opportunities as well. So don't pass up if you're not in one of these cities or can't travel to them. Internship types that are available to you through our program. We have 5 main categories. So advertising, communications. If you're coming from a background in marketing, advertising, writing, PR, project management or photography or things of that sort, this is a great route for you. Design. So if you study graphic design or motion or branding or art direction, we've got plenty of design internships. Fashion, more on the business side. So if you're focused within marketing or wholesale or PR, editorial, for example. Entertainment and media, so content production, TV production, film production, theater production, post-production, editing, those are all some great opportunities that you have. And then fine arts, so working, with artists, galleries, or institutions. So lots of opportunities that you can do through the program. And how it works is that when you apply for our program, you'll go through an admissions process and we'll develop together with you your strategy. And your strategy is what are the destinations, timeline, and internship types that you're thinking, right? And we'll build that out, and then we'll look to find you an internship that fits within your strategy. Now, we do guarantee an internship placement, and that means that if we can't secure something for you, you get a full program refund. But we're 98 to 99% successful in making that happen. So it is something that you can really count on in having something lined up. A few program inclusions, and I'll go through each of them. So the first is that when you start with the program, you go through the ABI Academy, and this is a structured um, uh, uh, like mentorship and coaching course that happens before the internship. This is all about making sure that you're ready for the recruitment process and also ready for the internship. So first section is all about preparing your portfolio, resume, and interview skills together with coaches that are working within the industry. And then second section is about making sure that you're ready for the internship and prepared for your expectations, different managerial styles, how to network and build and cultivate the best opportunities out of it. This is all done online. It's a combination of live sessions that you're doing with our coaches and our team, and then some content for you to watch as well. Some of our industry experts and advisors, just as examples, we have plenty more as well, but these are really high caliber people that are working in the industry who are going to be there to help support you throughout that alongside our coaches. Number two is a guaranteed internship placement. So internships could be between 3 to 6 months in duration. They could be part-time or full-time. You could do it for credit or just for experience. And actually 60% of our participants are getting hired post-internship in either part-time or full-time opportunities by those companies. So, this is a great way to start segueing into your career. It's important to note that internships could be paid or unpaid, so you should budget for an unpaid internship, but you could always do something part-time or virtual if that's a limitation for you. Just some of our company partners to highlight, Reflex Group, where Sally worked, creative agency in New York. That's where she got started. We've been working with them for a long time. Factory PR in LA, and Friends is a content production agency in London. Studio Vanti in Berlin, Milkman in Melbourne, and we have others in Sydney and virtual as well. But over 300 company partners, so lots of companies. Those are just some examples. If you're going internationally, we handle the visa processing and insurance arrangements. And then if you're going to any of our cities, we have housing, options available for you that you can take advantage of. We have an in-city orientation from our coordinators there, and then ABI pre-trip information and guide to local creative scenes. And then just all the way throughout the program, one thing that I think you'll notice from our team is the amount that we're hands-on with you. From the beginning, we're helping you with getting your profile ready. We're supporting you on the placement side. We're really doing the heavy lifting on getting you an offer and liaising with all the companies. You just got to show up for the interview. And then supporting with the travel process and helping you out in city as well with events, in city orientation and emergency contact. And then last but not least, you have access to our community. I think, network is so important, and it can really help you develop your career much faster. The question is, like, where do I develop that network from? And you should absolutely utilize all of the network that you have in your university, like your professors, your alumni, your fellow students. But this is another resource for you. So over 1,000 program alumni that have been through the program, and connect with them on our app. Monthly events in each city, and then workshops, industry talks, and exclusive job boards. So this is a great place for you to connect with people who are your senior, working at companies like Apple, CBS, Saatchi, Netflix, etc., or like Sally at VML, right? And say, hey, I'm going through the program. I want to connect with you. I want to understand how you got there, and use it as a starting point for you to start a conversation, right? We do have a tuition. So if you're going through our program for our domestic or virtual program, it's $2,250. If you're going internationally, it's $3,250. That includes all the components I mentioned. It does not include the visa, housing, or insurance, or like your flights or things like that. Those are depending on where you're going, but this is all inclusive for our program fee. And we have a grant, so this is up to the full program fee for local or virtual participants who are coming from a financial needs-based background, and you can find out that information on our application page. And then how to apply. So we have an upcoming application deadline on May 10th. So if you're looking for US fall internships or Australian summer internships, now is the time to apply. It's really simple and there's no fee to apply. So I'm just going to show you really quickly. If you go to our website, you hit apply, you're going to need your resume, your portfolio, a couple of academic references, and then if you're applying for the grant, the documents for it, which are there on that link. You hit start your application, and the only thing I'm going to show you here is that when you're doing your application, you'll see this internship information it will ask you. You don't need to know this information 100% yet. Just put what you think is good for you. Like I think I want to go to New York and Chicago and in design or ad com and marketing, for 3 months, but we're going to talk about it during the interview process. So, it's not set in stone. After this, you'll have an interview with us. You hit submit. After this, you'll have an interview with us. And then after the interview, we'll let you know if you're accepted or not. And from there, you can decide whether or not you want to join. Before you decide to join, there's no fee to anything. You can apply, you can meet with our team, you can apply again later if it wasn't right for you. And then once you decide to join, that's when the first point where there won't be any deposit or anything required. Cool. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the link for that in the chat here, so you have that information. And we'll go back to our questions for Sally. I see there's some good questions here. Perfect. Great. Let me just kind of scroll up. Okay, so let's start with Katerina. Katerina said, do you have any tips on how we can improve our portfolio? Like, what can we do to have more projects to stand out?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Obviously, being a creative, your folio is sort of like your resume. You'll probably need a paper resume, but it is the one thing that people are going to look at. So it is very important that it, represents you. I think in terms of building it, I think it can be really hard when you sort of feel like, you don't have concrete briefs. I think there's a lot of things you can do though. First of all, write your own briefs, literally write yourself a brief and for a fake brand or a real brand and come up with ideas. I think people interviewing you just want to see that you've got thoughts and are passionate and have spent the time to do the work. It doesn't necessarily have to be a real concrete experience. That's sort of the first one. The second one is basically just put your hand up for every possible thing that could get you a brief. It could be, your dad's friend has like an egg brand that he wants to sort of start, like literally anything you could do something for. You can basically find them yourself. And then also a lot of countries, I'll speak to Melbourne for example, but I think these type of things everywhere have things like award school or internships like ArtBound that you can sign up for and get work that way. ArtBound was completely invaluable to me. I still have work from Reflex Group on my folio that I am proud of. That was, something that I didn't get paid for, but the amount of experience I got was, I would never be where I was today if it wasn't for that. So don't be afraid to sign up for literally any opportunity and you will be rewarded with real briefs in the future, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really good advice, Sally. And I think I want to kind of double click on something there, which is that you mentioned it doesn't have to be a real client, and that's really true. I think a lot of students feel limited of like, I don't have anybody paying me yet, or I don't have any work yet. So how do I build my portfolio? And you can do spec projects. And this is
Yeah.
actually, there's a lot of websites that have briefs that are free that you can download. You can just Google search that, but also you can totally prompt like ChatGPT to start giving you briefs, right? And being like, okay, I want a FMCG product, and now I want a car brand, and now I want a beauty brand, and now I want like a clothing brand, right? Like give me a bunch of different things so I can showcase all my different styles across different clients. Um,
Mhm.
that way you have at least 6 projects that are going up there that feel really strong to you. And if you're going to be putting time and effort into trying to send in job applications and you're going to be waiting weeks or months to get opportunities and you're not hearing back, it's your portfolio, right? Go spend time on your portfolio. If you spend a month or two on that and then you come back to your job applications, you'll see an impact. You'll see the difference of how that's panning out for you. Yeah.
Another thing we used to do, just a really quick one, is like if we saw an ad that we thought was terrible, like for example, right now I'm looking at a bus shelter poster for, I think it's Nintendo, that looks very confusing. We would take a photo of the bad ad and redo it how we think
Cool.
we would do it, and people in job interviews love that because you can directly talk to how you can do a better job than the real agency or whoever did that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it shows your willingness also to critique something and to have an
Yeah.
opinion, right? Like having an
Yeah.
opinion is so important for a creative job. And
Mhm.
if you come in and say, "Oh, I did this and I did that, and this is why did you do it that way?" Well, my professor told me to do it like that. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't get you hired. But coming in and saying, well, this is what I saw, exactly what you said, Sally. I saw this Nintendo
Mhm.
ad on a bus stop, and I just couldn't help but notice that
Mhm.
these elements felt really off to me, and I wanted to correct it. So this is what I came up with. This is what it looks like.
Mhm.
Still working within that brand's identity.
Mhm.
Um, and I think one last thing to add there is that if you're planning to work for an agency or a brand, the designs are not about you. I'm sorry to say it,
Mhm.
they're about the client, right? And you're going to be the creative that comes up with amazing ideas and is able to execute it in a way that the client can't. But ultimately, it has to be able to meet different clients' styles. And so if your portfolio looks very same across the board, right? Like everything is definitely, Katarina, and it's got a great
Mhm.
style, but it's only Katarina. That's going to be hard to get you hired, right? What you want is to showcase that you have skill sets that are applicable to many different types of clients, and that really, makes your portfolio stand out. Yeah,
Mhm.
cool. Sophia said, "Hi Sally, I'm wondering how do you find discovering and developing your personal style?"
Yeah, I think that's a good question that probably touches on what Ben just mentioned. I think there definitely is a balance between like your personal style and owning that and being flexible. So I think it's great to have like a brand for yourself. So, you know, definitely push what you are good at and lean towards and almost have like maybe a little logo for yourself or a little about page that showcases that. But as long as you take your personal style and make sure that it's not kind of locked and is adaptable. I think that's probably the main thing. And in terms of my personal style, I would say I lean towards like humor. And so I'm always looking for things that I find funny in the real world and then translating them into scripts or posters or things like that. So get going outside and actually being inspired by seeing comedians or, listening to funny podcasts. I think finding inspiration that aren't necessarily like typical creative, i.e., looking at other ads or other designs, but that are in your sort of style. For example, say you love like beautiful floral kind of illustrations, actually going outside and being inspired by the real life versions of that, I think will stop you getting stuck on one specific vision, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I've now this a couple times you said it, so I want to
Mm.
again like highlight that piece, which is that something that you said a few times here is going out and getting inspiration, going out,
Yeah,
taking a walk, going out and seeing a comedian, going
so important.
and and I think the important thing here is that like creativity doesn't happen in a black box, right?
Mm.
It's not like you're sitting and your brain is like, ah, I'm gonna just pump out ideas. It comes from having new inputs and your brain being like, oh, I get to
Mm.
adapt this input without, not consciously, your brain adapting those inputs to whatever you're currently working on. So going to see a comedian is great, especially if your style is to lean towards humor, which connects with consumers really well.
Mm.
But also like go to a museum, go to a gallery, like go take a walk in the nature, right? Like things that allow you
Mm.
to just like, flip through a magazine or something that gets you some new inputs before you start thinking about the outputs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Alyssa asked, what to do if you've graduated, you're working on your portfolio, you're doing some courses, you're volunteering, but you're still not finding employment.
Yeah, it's tough. I definitely understand that feeling of being like, I don't understand why nothing's coming to me. I think I have a few tips. One is reach out to literally everyone. Like, you want to be insufferable on LinkedIn. You want to be one of those people that's like, oh my God, sending so many messages to people because you never know when like a coffee or something is going to lead to something a little bit more concrete. So, for example, when I moved to London, I sort of was chatting about transferring within Ogilvy, but I didn't have anything concrete. So I basically went on LinkedIn and messaged every single creative director that I could find that existed in London and tried to get them to have coffee with me. A lot of them completely ghosted me because they're busy people, and I understand that. But I think you never know when a connection or, putting yourself out there on LinkedIn, etc., will pay off. So just keep going and grinding at it would be my first tip. I know it's really, really frustrating. And then my second tip would be to do something like ArtBound. When I finished uni, I was a bit like, okay, what's next? I know I want to work in an agency, but I wasn't getting hired. And, doing basically learning hard skills at an actual proper agency, I think was what landed me an actual, junior job, because I was then able to say, I don't just have university experience. I know what it's like to work in a real agency, and I've gotten feedback from real creative directors. And that was a lot more concrete of an experience than university by itself. I think you kind of want to just do both if you can.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Great
Mm-hmm.
advice. And yeah, I think Alyssa as well. It takes some time, right? I think continue to work on. Well, this is a program alumni as well, so
Mm-hmm.
continue to work on your portfolio as much as you can. Like just keep building out your
Yeah.
portfolio because I think that's the most important thing. But
Yeah.
also like put yourself out there in terms of the way that Sally was saying, right? Like, being in Woodbridge, I know where you mentioned before yesterday's call, being in Woodbridge, like you may not have as many opportunities for like big brand names as you would in some other areas, but you have a lot of probably mom and pop shops and things that they need help, with certain stuff. So like starting to do some volunteer work for them, and that can lead eventually into some freelance work, and your freelance work can roll into a paid position somewhere. So I would start like being in connection with people in the community and not trying to do it in isolation, but really like developing your portfolio, but also going knocking on doors, even if it's totally outside of your comfort zone, and being like, hey, I graduated in graphic design, I have these experiences, can I do some work for you? Even if it's for like
Yeah. Sell
pay me
yourself.
$1 so I can call it a paid freelance role, and then we'll both feel good about it, and get that stuff on your resume, and then eventually that will somebody's gonna like it, and they're gonna be like, let me refer you to my other friend who's also looking for some work, and that's how you get started. Yeah. Okay. Aishwarya, I'm currently based in London, so will I be able to apply for the design roles? I think you're speaking about ArtBound Initiative. Correct me if I'm wrong. We do take plenty of participants coming from London, so if you're looking for things in the UK, or if you're looking to go abroad or virtual, absolutely. So I'm assuming you're talking about ArtBound Initiative, but you can correct me if I was wrong there. You can message. Um, Onom or Onome, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. For someone who wants to venture into creativity and entertainment and the media, what would you advise for them to do during their masters, and how can they navigate into the media, creativity, and entertainment space? Maybe also could you let us know I think you did tell us, you said you graduated in 2024 with and studied mass communication. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think correct me if I'm wrong, but you're basically asking like during your masters, what else should you be doing to kind of make sure that you're then set up to get a creativity and entertainment job? And I think that would be similar to my other advice of like just go to everything you can, put your hand up for every single opportunity. I know doing a master's, I haven't done one, but would be really, really time consuming. And I think it would be very easy to be like head down and focused on that. But I think still be thinking about, the world that's out there post masters. Is there like event things that I can go to that focus on, like entertainment launches, things like that? I think literally anything you can go to meet people, just having like any sense of network would be super valuable. But I know I sympathize that that's a tough one because you're gonna be busy, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But also a master's is a lot of people take a master's really to build connections and a network, like that's especially within certain types of masters, like a lot of people are using that to build their network. So
Yeah.
depending on the master's program that you take, that's a great place for you to just like milk the connections of your peers, because give it, a lot of those people are taking a master's like in the middle of their career, or they're going to go back to something really quickly, or they're going to shoot up skyrocket in their career really fast. So like you build all those connections, and then within 1, 2 years, suddenly you've got a lot of people that are working in the industry. Um, make sure to keep in touch with people that you have built relationships with there. Lisa
Mm.
asked, hello, I'm wondering if you have any tips for people from the US or Europe trying to find art jobs in Australia. I'm going to start off the
Mm.
answer for this one. If you've never done a working holiday visa in Australia before, it's a 2-year visa that allows you to work and holiday. And you
Mm.
can work for different places during your time there. You can do paid work or volunteer work. It's a really unique visa because, for example, if you're going to the United States, it doesn't work like that. It's a
SEC.
genuine, yeah, and you've got to be at one job, and when that job is done, you go back home. So Australia is unique in that way. I would, of course, naturally, I would recommend for you to do our program. We actually will secure an internship for you within Australia, and you can do it for 6 months so that hopefully that turns into employment. And you can be employed with them, for up to 2 years in total. Or you can kind of bounce around to some different opportunities. So that's what I would recommend. I think that finding something internationally can be challenging because a lot of the small to mid-sized firms that may be really open towards taking somebody in, they don't really know or understand visa processes. They may have enough talent in their circles to be like, well, why would I look for international talent instead? And it's really hard sometimes when you can't do a face-to-face interview. So they might just wonder like, why the extra hassle, if I have enough talent here. And going through a program like ours that works as an intermediary can help to part of the reason why we exist for international programs. But I will also hand it over to Sally to talk maybe about your experience, Sally, working within our jobs anyway within Australia in general, and if you have any tips here.
Yeah, I definitely echo what you said, Ben. I think trying to move to London and not being on the ground, people found it a little bit hard to take me seriously. Like, until you're there and are like, I can actually get a coffee with you and I could actually work here, it can be tricky. So, doing something like ArtBound where you've got something lined up, I think being in Australia will be a lot easier than trying to apply from Europe. Um, and I would also say that the industry in Australia is a little bit smaller than other parts of the world, like in Melbourne specifically, and Perth, etc. It can be smaller. So I do think it's very important to kind of get your foot in the door while you're overseas with something like ArtBound or, whatever you can find, for example, applying for the working visa. I probably wouldn't recommend, just hassling people from overseas because it is very hard for them to kind of understand that you're actually going to be there in the flesh. So I think you sort of do need somewhat of a bridger if you're moving, would be what I would say.
Cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
great. I'm glad that was the line.
Mm.
Alyssa had another question, which is I want to increase my audacity career-wise. I want to become more bold and like getting out there. Like, how can I do so? Like, what are some of the suggestions that you have?
Okay, I think a big one is be like posting your work. Like that can feel really scary, especially on like LinkedIn or something. But if you have work that you're proud of, just like put it out there. I feel like that's a bold move in itself because you never know who will kind of pick you up. And then in terms of like coming up with bold ideas, I think it's sort of what we were saying before of don't let your rational part of your brain be too aggressive. Like think big, and it's a lot easier to take a big idea and have people be like, okay, we need to tone this down than to have a small idea and push it up. So honestly, my advice would just be like go for it and do things that make you feel a bit like, oh, this is a bit weird, or like this is coming on a bit strong. And people will not never judge you for trying too hard and going too bold, I would say.
Great advice. And I think to kind of just mirror what you're saying and also to add on to that is that one thing that you can do is to just do what you think somebody else would do. So,
Mm.
like instead of having to be confident, you can just mirror what you think confidence looks
Yeah.
like. And you don't have to feel comfortable in it at all, right? You can be
Mm.
like, I think this is how somebody would do this. I think they would post like this. I think they would ask these questions. And just try it. Like even like you're acting, you're like, okay, I'm just going to pretend to be this person for a minute. And then you get good responses and it reinforces what you did and you're like, oh, well that worked. Let me try that again, right? So I think look at some people on LinkedIn look at some people around your circles that you're like admire for their audacity and just try it. Like be like, I'm gonna do the same thing they did, and see how it works for you. Try it on for size. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know someone who basically walked into agencies with like a business card and just was like, here, hire me, and left. And like maybe that's slightly too far, but I think it worked for them. So honestly, like go
Yeah.
too far and someone tell you it's too far would be my advice.
Yeah, I had a similar experience for myself when I was looking for management roles. I was working in hospitality, and I didn't really realize that it wasn't quite like the norm to just like go into the corporate office on a biweekly basis and like knock on the
Yeah.
door. So I used to just
Good
like
that you
go
do.
in. I would just be in Soho and I'd be like, "Oh, I want to stop by the corporate office." So I'd like go, and this is like a company that has like 1,000 employees, right? So I would like go into the corporate office and like I would just knock on the door of the HR guy and be like, "Hey, what's up, man? Like, how are you doing? Like, how's your day? You remember me? I came by a couple weeks ago. Do you have any management positions yet?" And like, I think this was not normal, but when a management position came up, he was like, "Oh, Ben's been knocking on my door like 5 times. Let me call him." Right? So otherwise, he would never think about me. We wouldn't know each other. So it worked. It's a little bit yeah. So we have a few minutes left. I mean, I know we have a cutoff in a minute here, but we'll just go a couple minutes over if you have the time, Sally. Um, Fadil mentioned I did a business info systems degree, and he said some of us might not necessarily come from a creative background, may not have a decent portfolio yet, but are highly invested in the creative world. What advice would you give us in what we can do now to kickstart our creative career professionally?
Mm. Yeah, I think that is probably just where I kind of maintain the advice of any opportunity that comes your way, go for it, but also be going out there yourself. I think Australia, for example, has like award school that you can do. You can put your hands up to like do awards, for example, like where they give you a brief, you can do like literally anything that you can do, I think would be the way to go. Like you don't have to have creative person on your resume, but if you've got a whole folio that shows all your creative work, they would never ever judge, where you kind of came from before that. I know plenty of people that did sort of a more like engineering, for example, and then moved into creative work. And that's just because they did the work in their folio. Your folio is your number one thing, not your resume. So I think just work on building that and you will be in a good spot.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily, what I hear you saying is you don't necessarily have to have like a 4-year degree in graphic design if you have a strong
Yeah,
portfolio, right?
exactly. Yeah, that's a
And
more
and
concise.
there's like so much how to online now. It just depends on your own, like one way or another, you got to learn it, right? So either if you're the type of person that's really good at learning things on your own and doing things on your own, you want to go learn the softwares and the theory and come up with great designs without going through school, and you find that well, it will be cheaper, but you find that, effective. Um,
Mhm.
Great. A lot of people need the structure. So if you feel like actually I'm not very good at that, maybe you want to go take a 1-year course, right? That's going to
Mhm.
get you your foot, started. But either way, one way or another, you're going to have to learn the skills, right? So it's about picking the path that is economical and also time, makes the most sense time-wise for you. But if you've learned those skills and you've built out a portfolio and you're able to talk the language and you know the tools, then you're there, right? Like that's all you need, right? Now you can start applying for things. So it's just about what's the speed that you can get to there. Another thing to think about, Fadil, is like there are many different roles within, agencies that are not necessarily creative, right? And so sometimes what you can think about is instead of like, oh, I want my entry into creative world to be one stop, you can think like
Yeah.
maybe it's 3 stops. Maybe the first thing I'm doing is I'm doing an account management role for a non-creative company for a year. And then I'm doing an account management role for a creative company for a year. And now I'm in a creative company, and then I'm able to like build out my folio and within the company be like, hey, can I start to work on can I start to lean the creative route? That's the real direction I want to go. So you can like take a few stops instead of trying to do it all in one go. Because
Mhm.
realistically, you're competing with a lot of people who might have more skill set than you, right? So you need to
Yeah.
either match the skill set or make your ways there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Ben. Just something to add on that. Like my creative partner is a really good example. She started in at Ogilvy, like when she was a junior years and years and years ago, basically just doing like their admin. But every single time people were stressed and felt like they needed like a social post, she would just put her hand up and be like, I can do that, I can do that, and really slowly worked to be trusted as being able to do small creative work, and then moved into a copywriter years later. So even going and doing a completely different role in the agency and shifting your way over, like they will take anyone that's putting their hand up to be creative, even if that's not your wheelhouse. So definitely that's a great avenue to explore.
Yeah, and business info systems is something that like probably really
So
applicable across so many
yeah,
different things, right? So like
exactly.
find the roles where your degree is really competitive, but you're like, the reason I want to do business info systems here as opposed to there is because I love the creative industries, right? Then it becomes a plus as opposed to a detractor, right? Um, so that's a good way to to
Mm.
to go about it. Yep. Great. And after university, what was your initial role where you've been able to grow and move up to higher roles?
Well, when I finished uni, I was doing just like freelance graphic design for RMIT, and then that's when I did my ArtBound in New York. I was there for 6 months at Reflex Group. So that was my first like actual agency role. So did that in New York. It was amazing. I learned like an insane amount. I think that was the first time I was like, oh, this is what an agency is like. And then I came back and applied for agency jobs in Melbourne. And after doing a little bit of random graphic design work, because it can take a little while to build your folio, that's when I landed an actual agency junior graphic designer job. So that was sort of the kind of structure. Doing like freelance jobs, doing the internship to actually get agency experience, and then getting a junior agency role.
Well, great. Well, I'm going to wrap it up because we're out of
Mhm.
time here, and I think the rest of the questions about building portfolio, tips on maintaining style, we've answered those. Katerina,
Yeah.
I don't have specific advice for you about work protocol. I'm not familiar, so I don't
Mm.
think I can give you a good answer there.
Mm.
But I am going to post a few things here, so I'm going to repost our application page if you're interested in applying for our program. You've got my LinkedIn there, so please connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me any messages or questions that you have.
Mm.
I also put Sally's LinkedIn, connect with
Mm.
Sally. This is how you build relationships. Just do it.
Yeah.
And that's basically it from my side.
Mm.
Sally, do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Sorry, not any questions. Do you have any last advice? Is what I meant to say. Do you have any last advice for everybody here on the call?
No last advice per se, but I will say I'm completely open to, if you're in London getting a coffee, if you're not in London, jumping on a Zoom call, having like, if you've got more specific questions, like Kat, your question about Portugal, I don't know it super well, but I'm totally happy to have a chat. So literally here for anything. I know it can be daunting, that first sort of step from finishing uni and getting a proper creative job, but you're going to get there. So please reach out if there's any questions.
Great, wonderful. That's so nice of you to offer your time, Sally. I really appreciate that, and really recommend you guys to take advantage of that. Sally's in an amazing position, so and has been in the exact same shoes that you are in now. So really take
Mm.
advantage of those opportunities if you can, and don't let those rest. Um, cool. Well, Sally, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. This was wonderful. This was fantastic, and I
Great to
appreciate
chat.
all the great questions in the chat as well. Thanks, guys, for putting such great questions, in here. I think this was really helped our conversation be,
Yeah,
um,
thanks everyone.
yeah, wonderful. And yeah, thank you, Sally. I really appreciate it. Yeah, and thanks everybody. Thanks so
Thanks
much for your time.
everyone.
All right,
Thank you. Bye.
bye. Ciao.